some of the new shrines coming are really fun.
Hello everyone and welcome to Action RPG. I'm your host Aaron, and for today's video we're headed to the world of Last Epoch. Mike, one of the senior developers at 11th Hour Games, held his normal Friday Q&A live stream on Twitch, which means I get to bring you Dev Chat 148. As always, Mike answered lots of great questions from the community and gave us some outlooks on the future. Now before we get into it, huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, a new partner to Action RPG, the Crimson Market. Now if you don't know about the Crimson Market, this is a modern day gaming club. At least that's how I like to describe it, that has some really cool tools on their website and their Discord with trade functions. But the best thing about the Crimson Market is the Crimson Club, where they give away a truly custom PC desktop every single month. And what you see on screen right now is definitely a PC I want. This is their EHG clock. So cool. Now, when it comes to the Crimson Club, they have multiple tiers and multiple ways to get entries to earn said PC. And right now they have the golden ticket to enter the club for free with 30-day royal tier. To get into the Crimson Market, the Crimson Club, it is the first link in the description. And thank you to the Crimson Market for sponsoring today's video. All right, let's jump into our first question for Dev Chat 148. And this is around power creep. Actually, this question is more around setting the game balance around 300 corruption.
Hey Mike, happy Friday. Do you think with Pinnacle being placed at the 300 corruption range, you've left yourselves with enough room to add fun power creep options while maintaining its difficulty for the foreseeable future? I mean, yeah, I think there's I think that we're going to see something similar happen in Last Epoch as we've seen in, you know, several other similar games in the genre, where you have a boss that's the hardest thing in the game. Like, let's use Diablo 2 as an example. When it launched, Diablo was the hardest boss in the game. And
now I'll figure there's also I also, like I said, it is part of being,
and you know, that hardest boss in the game changed a few times as they release new content, as they release new stuff. And I think that's a similar sort of thing is gonna happen, where we keep adding new stuff and new content and new bosses and things like that, and Aberoth sort of becomes a step on the way to whatever the next big bad is that shows up. Would be sort of my expectations of just how, you know, RPGs work in general. But no, we are not going this way. We are going to...
Now, you got to remember that Aberoth is one of the generals of Oribus. So we still haven't seen Oribus. A lot of times people think that when you fight the shade of Oribus, that's Oribus. No, that's just his shade. Now let's talk season reset for a moment.
Hi, Mike. What reason would someone who plays only COF do a fresh start with the season reset versus to continue to just play with the current cycle characters on Legacy? Is there going to be any difference? Great question. The one thing, there's only one thing, and it's a really narrow thing, and for most people you're gonna go, oh, so there's nothing. And so all it is that the ladder is refreshed. So if you want to compete on the ladder, you need to make a cycle character. That's it.
And I will be hosting a brand new community event for Cycle Reset. If you're looking for something fun to do in Last Epoch, the details will be coming this week. Now, the question on timing, EHG has been getting over and over again on their Discord, on their forums, on Reddit. I have been getting that question when I stream Last Epoch. Here's their current official response.
Asking for a vague response. I can do vague. All right, can you step in and say if some of the YouTubers' predictions saying that the presence of a cycle refresh pushes 1.2 to earliest January next year are not the case? Oh my goodness, there's like a negative in there at the earliest. That is so confusing. I have no comment whatsoever on this. I'm sorry. I have literally zero information whatsoever on this topic at all. I'm sorry.
Mike had to give that same response, I think 3 times during this stream, because it kept coming up over and over and over again. And I understand why. Obviously, the communication has come out for the last year and a half that cycles are supposed to be between 3 and 4 months, which puts this between October and November. but we know that we have Diablo 4 DLC, Vessels of Hatred, and the early access launch of PoE 2. So the current rumor is that the cycle is getting pushed back. Now, if you play a lot of Last Epoch, you probably know that there are multiple builds that can do over 1,000 corruption, not only in Cycle 1, but in Cycle 2 as well, and has led a large portion of the community to think that the game is balanced around 1,000 corruption. And I always try to tell people, no, the game is actually balanced around 300 corruption. I tell people this all day, every day in stream, and it cracks me up that this question was asked.
If you could squash a rumor mill. I keep hearing / reading that the devs don't want players reaching 1,000 plus corruption, and the ideal situation is players builds capping out around 300 corruption. Is this true at all? And if so, why is corruption allowed to scale endlessly and not have a cap if it's not realistic outcome of players playing in high corruption? Sorry if this has been asked recently. I've been missing a couple streams. That's fine. I'd say the general goal we target most things around is 300. Like if you...
I'm going to stop Mike just for a second. Did everybody hear what he just said? This is senior developer, co-founder of EHG. 300. Sorry.
If you look at the things like the way the game balances related systems and like things that happen at different breakpoints and like the relative difficulty of other content to 300 corruption, it kind of just there's a lot of indicators there that say like, hey, this is the sort of like where the pinnacle of difficulty we've really been targeting. Why is it endless and not just capped if that's where we want people to be generally hanging out? I mean, having something to strive for is, I think, great. And having that ability to just be like, I want to push just a little bit more, maybe I can push just a little bit more. That's a real big incentive for a lot of people. That's something that people really like doing, is just seeing how much higher it can be. And if we've got things balanced right, regardless of if that's a thing or not, having it is fun. So I think it's if things are balanced right, it's a good thing, and there's not really much of a downside to it.
There's also another reason to not cap corruption. You know what it is. Another bow class?
Any plans for another bow wielding class? Yeah. I'd really, there's a couple options here. My personal choice on something like this, I'd really like to see is more of a like hunter style, like bow and pet type class that would go well on Primalist as a mastery, or possibly showing up as like, there's lots of different ways we can do this that we've discussed. We've talked about, and this is like not planned, not set in stone, not soon. But that's what I'd like to see personally. I think that would be the most fun. The other option is putting it on an item and then letting that item be wielded by a Primalist.
I feel like that's what'll happen first, is they'll release a new bow and it'll literally be a Primalist bow that can only be used by Primalists that allows them to shoot. Balance changes for the event?
All right. Any chance of throwing in some balance changes for the underused skills / items for the refresh would entice a lot more people to come back? It's I don't want to say it's possible or not right now. I know there's a lot of places that people really want to see changes for skills, and there are a lot of safer changes we could make for a lot of the skills that are just flat out underperforming. It's a little tricky because the place we want to make the most changes, the changes that we want to make aren't going to be ready in time, and they're way too big to slip in for this event. So we're kind of paralyzed on part of it, and making the other changes but not making the ones we really want to make is kind of a like look to it, you know? So it's a tricky spot. I think there's a lot of awesome stuff happening over here that I'm going to look at right now. Trying to skip out a bunch more, Mike.
Whatever you can do for the mid-cycle event, even small balance changes, do it. One-handed spears,
No one-handed spears for javelin throwers.
So much easier if you had
I mean, we didn't adding an entire weapon type specifically for one ability
so much
is a big stretch for us scope wise for that ability. I think the one-handed spear is a very intentional gap in the overall weapon arsenal that is available to players. That's pretty intentional, and there's a lot of really cool theming available in that space that we can leverage with future content.
Coming in the future. My favorite question of the entire stream.
First, I want to thank you for being so open with the community. You're welcome. And active with the stream /Reddit/Discord. With the release of 1.1, many big streamers didn't even know that 1.1 was releasing. Yeah, that was a problem. Are you going to be a bit more exposing with 1.2 dev blogs, maybe videos or live stream, similar to how Diablo 4 is doing their live stream in before their releases? Yeah. We did not advertise 1.1 enough. That is an accurate assessment, I believe. I know nothing about the world of advertising, but I saw a few comments like that from a few like big streamers who I'm like, if we should be telling anyone about this, it's you.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. I have made this very public. I have told EHG this because I am streaming Last Epoch almost every day, and I was streaming every day for 1.1. It isn't just the marketing, okay? Obviously, the marketing doing kind of a PoE or Diablo style, I actually think this is something that EHG should borrow from. There's a tease for the tease, and then a lead up to the live stream where they break down everything. The patch notes, all the hype week, all that stuff. But it's also about the overall branding. Right now we're on update 1162, and Cycle 2 is not actually called Cycle 2. It's called Cycle 1.1. And Cycle 3 will not be called Cycle 3. It's going to be Cycle 1.2. And a lot of times when you tell people, hey, are you going to play 1.2? You know, they just don't understand what that means. So the term cycle is new, which means season or league, and then they're not using whole numbers. So for example, like Diablo, you know, right now it's currently on season 5, and season 6 is the release of the DLC. It just feels like it's the easiest win, making this change, dump cycle, turn them into seasons, and give them whole numbers. Just doing that, you would improve your player count. Now let's talk about Thorns.
Thoughts on percent reflect? Flat feels pretty viable with Thorn Shell, but percent being post mitigation makes it feel very hard stat to utilize. Yes, the damage output and like the amount of damage that players are expected to deal and receive compared to the amount of damage that enemies are expected to deal and receive are so disparate that it doesn't line up well with like a straight percent reflect doesn't line up well. It causes a lot of problems. And it doesn't scale well, and it does all sorts of weird things.
Correct.
I think there might be room for a little bit more latitude with reflect stuff, but it's one of those play styles, one of those like build archetypes that can very quickly turn into, all right, I'm just gonna build as tanky of a character as possible, and I'm gonna stand in this one spot and just wait for things to hit me, and it's gonna take me like a year to beat this boss, but I can't die. It's so boring. And like when it works properly and like it's a proper build to play and there's stuff to do and it's active and, you know, fast enough but not immortal, and like I'm just describing a healthy build here. When it does that, it's fantastic, you know, and it's something that we do really want to have. But it's such a like narrow line of that to tipping point of junk.
I agree. You actually don't want builds where you just do nothing. I just recently made a full Reflect Spriggan, and it's actually probably one of the funnest builds I have ever made, or at least the funnest build I made for Cycle 2. But ultimately, it's like so close to greatness. We got it to, I think, 500 corruption, which is incredible for full Reflect, but it just turn that knob just a little, Mike. All right, everyone. Unfortunately, we have come to the final question for Dev Chat 148 around progression after level 100. Mike, as always, thank you for your Friday live streams. The community truly appreciates it. To everyone out there, please like, share, and subscribe if you think I have earned it. Don't forget to check out the Discord. We're approaching 4,200 members. And again, we are going to have a community event for Cycle Refresh September 19th and a community event for the full launch 1.0 of Dwarven Realms, which is coming on September 27th. Both of those will be run through my Discord. Check out the Patreon. It is the best way to support into the future. Thank you for everyone that came out to movie night and game night this last week. It was an awesome time. I'm done. Mike, progression after level 100. Take it away.
Other than gearing, something like Diablo's Paragon board or Borderlands badass system. Excuse me. I can say that, can't I? We don't, so, okay. Probably not. Sorry, there has been discussion. I don't think we don't have one planned. We do like having endgame progression systems that there's still stuff to do after you've hit level 100 for progression based things. We're not huge on having those progression systems be tied to your max level, because we don't want to create an expectation for players to hit max level on a character. So like, if you have like, here's level 1, here's level 100, and this is your normal leveling progression, and there's stuff that happens past level 100. So then you've got special system 1 that is that fits nicely, that like it starts from level 1 and it just fits the entire game. Great. Doesn't matter what level you are. And then you've got maybe another system that like kicks in partway through the game, and that goes. Maybe this is like Monolith and green is crafting, let's say. And these are systems that persist past level 100. But then having like systems that start in the late end game, so like when you're like level 90, you know, and they start here and things like that. So it feels like it's tied to a very end game it is tied as a very end game progression system. And maybe this is like, maybe yellow's item factions and green is crafting and 90 is something new, I don't know. But having these systems that aren't tied, having these like end game progression systems that work possibly similarly to a Paragon board or Borderlands system, things like that, like there's room for that. But tying it to hitting max level creates an expectation that we say, hey, we want you to hit max level on your characters, but that's not an expectation we want to set. We don't want people to have that expectation of hitting max level. So these late game progression systems, we want people to be able to interact with them before they hit max level. And so based less on like decoupling it from level altogether, that where I labeled 90 where it starts, that would probably just be where it generally kicks in for a player, but it's actually a like a content progress completion that requires it. So like once you've unlocked, I don't know, Empowered, and a new system opens up when you've unlocked Empowered Monoliths, and you have to work through that to unlock a boss at the end of it or something. I don't know.